Hi, my name is Al Campbell. Higher Ed Jobs emailed me the other day and said that you were looking for a person in philosophy, religious studies, and theology and humanities. And that's the reason for, on the 20th of this month, I filled out an application and submitted it through your online application form. But when I looked at what I had filled out, everything is all there. It's all correct. But when I read over it, it just seems so two-dimensional, and it doesn't really express the Weltanschauung, my worldview about the importance of education. And so this little video is an attempt on my part to tell you the two reasons why I love education so much and why I want to be considered for the position. The first is that during World War II, my father was drafted and went to OCS, or Officers Training School, and graduated and was shipped over to Saipan, Iwo Jima, and Okinawa just a month or two after I was born. When he came home, he went back to work, and we lived in outside of Philadelphia, in New Jersey, in a nice community called Pennsauken, New Jersey, and it was a nice school system where I was, above average student, and education was, I had no problem with it. But he got a promotion to become a vice president in the home office, which meant that he had to move from Philadelphia office to the Pittsburgh office, which is their home office. And so he went to Pittsburgh and talked to a realtor and said, "What's the best school system in the area?" And the realtor said, "Mount Lebanon." And indeed it was the best school system in the Pittsburgh area. It was also the 19th best school system in the entire country, and the wealthiest community in Western Pennsylvania. And that had a profound negative effect upon me and my next youngest brother. I went from above average student to an average student, and being average in Mount Lebanon was not what you wanted to be. I mean, I never failed in anything, never got a D in anything, but most of my grades were C's, some of them were B's, and occasionally an A, but that was below Mount Lebanon standards. So I felt dumb, and we certainly didn't have the money to live in the wealthiest community in Western Pennsylvania, so I felt poor. Those two feelings were etched into my psyche. When I graduated from McCormick Theological Seminary, when I got my doctorate, by that time I realized I'd made a mistake figuring out how smart and dumb I was. Graduated top of my class, but that still haunts me. I understand that I'm not dumb. I get that. But it's so burned into my psyche that that is one of the things that makes me an excellent professor. There are loads of people that have an IQ that is beyond mine, way beyond mine. But what makes me a better professor is I know how my students feel. And I don't want any of my students to suffer like I did. That's one story. The second story is, or the second part of the reason why I want the job, that I've not only taught overseas and gone to school overseas, but I've traveled all over the world. And 7 years ago, I went to Myanmar, which used to be called Burma, in the hopes of interviewing Dalai Lama Sushi. which I wasn't able to do. But I was up in a place called Inlay Lake and had a tour guide by the name of Momo. And Momo had to pick up, in Myanmar, they don't, I mean, the roads don't allow for buses and things like that. So basically you have a driver and a tour guide, and you sit in the back seat and they drive you where you're going to go, and the tour guide goes out and shows you, and then you get back in the car. And she said, we had to stop at my place for a second, and I had to pick up your itinerary, so when you leave here, this is the hotel you're going to go to in the next location, comma, but you can meet my daughter, who's home on winter break also. And her name is Titi, and she's 9 years old. Walked into the living room, and there's this 9-year-old kid standing in the middle of their living room saying, hi, my name is Titi. Do you want to play some games? And we sat on the floor of their living room playing Scrabble for 45 minutes. Most of the time I was laughing. At the end of the game, she said, the game's over now. And I started to get up. Now, we're both firstborns. TT is a firstborn, I'm a firstborn, which means we're both competitive, but I was not playing to beat a 9-year-old kid. I was playing to have fun. And she said, no, I had to add up the score. So I sat down like I was told to do. I sat down and waited for her to add up the score, and she said, I knew I could beat you. I won. This is a true story. I stuck my finger in her face and said, young lady, don't you ever forget that. You beat me in my game, in my language, in your country. Don't you ever forget that. That was the beginning of my relationship with my granddaughter and my family in Myanmar. I've been back there twice since that first trip. The last trip was during winter break this past year. And Momo had been my tour guide the first time. The second time, her husband, Coco, was my tour guide. This third time, we went on a family tour of parts of Myanmar that I'd been to before and places I'd never seen before. And it was the time of my life. The only problem with it is that we had to work around TT's schedule because she was graduating, and there was a special assembly, an awards assembly, where she won a statewide math contest in Shen State. Came back home, and on January 20th is my birthday. And that is the same day that the first confirmed case of COVID occurred, was noted. And that changed our whole Belt and Chong, our whole worldview. TT is going to a university in Yangon, but because of coronavirus, she has to do it online, so she's taking online classes at her home, and when the coronavirus ebbs and flows away, she'll go back to Yangon and go to school. The Myanmar government is a military dictatorship, and they have, once they've discovered the first couple cases of COVID in Yangon, they shut down the entire country, which saved hundreds of thousands of people catching the coronavirus. I mean, they have problems with coronavirus, but nothing like ours. And they have if you look at their the COVID website for Johns Hopkins University, Myanmar is one of the least dangerous places to live, but they shut the whole country down to keep it that way, which is good. The good part of it. The bad part is that Coco and Momo now are unemployed, and their daughter's in college. So what would you do if your granddaughter was going to college and their your granddaughter's parents were unemployed. It is imperative that, I mean, and one of my problems is that where I'm teaching right now, they're mostly an online or on-site campus or college or community college, and they've converted onto all online, and the student body has dwindled a great deal. And I'm usually teaching 3 or 4 classes a semester. I'm now down to 1. So I need to get additional classes to teach. Partly because I want to support my family, and partly because I want to support my students, because I don't want other students, whether they're my grandchildren in Myanmar or students I'm teaching now, to think less of themselves. So I appreciate your time listening to me do this video. But if you have any questions, I'd love to be able to sit down and talk with you about teaching online for you. So I appreciate your time. Hope to hear from you sometime soon. In the meantime, you take care. Ciao.